Hi, it's Kirby Summers. Today is October 4th. It's Friday. And this is a follow-up to the podcast I uploaded a couple of days ago, where basically I shared with you that Buckingham Palace has been implicated by one of the three different types of people who have been abused. Well, the reason that I'm doing this is because clearly, from experience, having been speaking out, commencing when Epstein was arrested in July of 2019, I too have come across the paid trolls of Buckingham Palace who attempted to negate everything that Virginia Giuffre brought to the table. And I noticed in the podcast I uploaded, where I didn't say who the person was that certain child victims were sent to at that very large house in the UK. But suddenly, while many of you remember, let's say, Jimmy Savile's role with Prince Charles, let's say Lord Mountbatten's horrific legacy, right? And of course, Epstein's very close friendship with Prince Charles, a victim certainly has been speaking about having been sent to that big palace in the UK. Now, what I want to say is that what's being exposed as a result of the Sean Combs arrest and the incredible amount of separate lawsuits against him, and the fact that it is now being acknowledged that he learned from record producer Clive Davis, who began working with CBS as their attorney before being moved into their record label. Remember, CBS was outed in 1975 during the Church Committee hearings of being an arm of the three-letter agency. So from the beginning of the so-called record industry in the 1940s, it began before that clearly because music was like a gramophone, the old time records and radio and all of that. But when it became a real industry where they were selling records to the public, its roots are firmly entrenched into the blackmail and holding something over someone's head in respect to their artist, right? So again, many of you may remember my podcast on Janis Joplin and having someone inserted into her life, and then she tragically had an overdose. Okay, well, what if I told you that the male on male situation, which was illegal in our countries, our separate countries, for many, many years and only became legalized not too long ago, where people actually went to jail, let's say, so for example, these Diddy parties. What if I told you that Bohemian Grove, that was founded in the late 1800s in California, where Hollywood began? Okay, so I go into some of that in my book, Chasing Chandler, the second edition. I'll leave links below if you guys are interested. That's really that behind closed doors, what was happening at Bohemian Grove is sort of what was happening behind closed doors at Diddy's parties. So this is not a new thing. Clive Davis, like Leslie Wexner, who provided Epstein with video surveillance properties and an airplane and money, they're on the same level, so to speak, right? But this, and while I have heard people say that, oh, well, Sean Combs was a victim too, well, let's just say that everyone is introduced into the industry using those practices that lead to blackmail, control, using drugs, doing the R thing, doing the man-on-man thing, but it's part of a system. It didn't begin with Clive Davis. It didn't begin with any record studio executive. It has its beginnings from a very, very long time ago. But here's the difference between a victim and a, let's call it a predator. People who are victims, who are passed around, this includes girl groups, this includes models, this includes all forms of, let's call it, entertainment. So this is cultural conditioning. Some people opt out. They don't want to pay that price. There are many examples, and I'll be including information on my Substack. Again, there's only a limited amount of things I can say here. I can say a lot more on that platform. These people who opt out choose not to become procurers, not to become someone who engages in destroying somebody else's life, because it's a life-altering situation, if you catch what I'm trying to say to you. So that, for example, Combs decided, hey, yeah, I'm game. And he did as he was taught, allegedly by Clive and other record producers, because he was more interested in making the money and interested in the fame. There are no, well, I'm going to try to say this in this manner. There is no way that Combs is a victim. He has played the game for 30 years. He is a predator, a first-class predator, who we now know took advantage of a 9-year-old. A little boy. A little boy. There are many other minors. So we can feel sorry also for Usher, who I discovered while I was writing my Deconstructing Wexner series on Substack, is related to Roy Raymond, who was the original founder of Victoria's Secret, which was oddly purchased by Leslie Wexner for only $1 million. So we then find Roy Raymond, again, the original founder of Victoria's Secret, who at the time of the sale was making $6 million a year with 6 stores, suddenly jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And I know I'm jumping from topic to topic. And the reason I am doing that is to show you by my words how this is endemic to the fashion industry, to the Hollywood industry. A good example would be Harvey Weinstein, but that's just one of many. And now the record industry is being exposed as basically doing the same thing. In the past, we have had several people try to step forward, making allegations that they were provided to other royals. You know, again, on my Substack, I name other royals, members of the royal family, who have been paired up with a trafficked victim who was a high fashion model. So you would think that this high fashion model and this other royal were actually dating, when in reality, her words, not my words, but her words, were that she was PIMPED out as a beard for him. Now, this thing about the male on male situation and the not just the just not just objectifying women and not just the misogyny, but the industry as a whole, the industries, I should say, as a whole, again, is to reduce the importance of women. And I'm going to say something to you that may or may not make sense to you. And again, I encourage you to come on over to my Substack. I'm going to be dropping something for everyone free. You don't have to pay a dime. If you subscribe, that's great. You support my work, and you have access to, I don't know what I have, close to 250 deep dives. However, I am going to drop something, I believe, as soon as the next day or two. So you don't have to become a paying member if you don't want to, but that's where my deep dives are. This is taught as leverage. If you have blackmail material on someone who you want to control because it brings money into your pocket, then that person is very likely not to say anything to anyone. And then if that person does say something to someone, the excuse will be, well, that person is hooked on drugs, so that they're unreliable, or that person has been, like, let's say, in a couple of cases, we've heard, oh, that person was hospitalized for having psychiatric issues, or that person has been put in jail. I mean, so there are false arrests. Historically, we know about some of these false arrests. These happened during the Franklin scandal. This happened again with some of the Epstein victims. This has happened with some of the people in Sean Combs' circle. So these are things that are readily available to you if you did some research. No one is arrested falsely unless there's a reason to discredit them. So again, I've said this many times before, if they cannot eliminate you completely, meaning you are no longer breathing air, let's call it, then the next best thing is to discredit you, right? So that people do not listen to you. I believe Clive Davis recently finally said, well, how do you listen to, I'm not going to name him right now, but some of you may be following everything I'm saying a little better because maybe you're more aware of what's going on. How do you listen to this person who was in jail? Well, okay, so that's a perfect example of how falsely arresting someone or setting someone up to be arrested, who knows too much, who is credible, is discredited, and then these people just continue doing what they're doing. So again, what if I told you as I began this podcast that Bohemian Grove, at a time when it was considered a crime for man-on-man situations, which would make one go to jail, is just a larger example. And remember, the presidents would go there, the elite of the world would go there. There is allegedly I can't say the word, so I'm going to have to not finish that sentence, sorry. Well, what if again, it is just a on a grander scale, what the so-called puffy, I'm trying to be as discreet as possible, and it's difficult, parties were like back in the day, commencing from the late 1800s, right? So what better way? I mean, it was created by people in the entertainment industry, however, became the mecca for the most powerful people in the world, but it's very private, it's very hush-hush. But the practices that went on behind those gates in California continue to present day. And, you know, their quote, it's just really hard for me to say too much on this platform, but many people, I'm just going to use this phrasing, many people know about this. When someone receives too much pushback for what he or she has said, and in my case, we have a bunch of people who, again, as many of you have noticed, have attempted to slur me. Now, I'm a victim, I'm a survivor of a billionaire in this world. So I have some firsthand experience. I was almost killed on 3 different occasions. I was held hostage, I was kidnapped. There are many things that happen. Luckily for me, they did not get me hooked on any drugs. They probably have film, who knows? But I have been fighting for 30 years to get my voice heard, so that right now, I believe people are thinking, oh, well, this is finally in the mainstream media. I received a phone call from a friend the other day saying, hey, everything you've been talking about for years and years and years is finally gone mainstream. Yeah, it has. But the reason it has, I will tell you, is because, let's say, the hip hop, the rap, that industry was infiltrated just like the women's liberation movement was infiltrated by Gloria Steinem. And once it was infiltrated, then it's no longer a normal, it doesn't, it's a manufactured, there are manufactured stars, let's call them, who then do not what they normally would do, but do things on behalf of the puppet masters. I hope you guys are following me. I'm really trying very hard to choose my words carefully, and I'm somewhat concerned that you might be getting some of this, understanding some of this, and you may not. Again, I would encourage you, it doesn't hurt to just sign up and get my newsletter so that you can read in detail what I've been writing for a long time. So that some people think that now that this has been exposed, that maybe there's going to be some reckoning by this power elite. And my thing is that, well, the rap music industry that Sean Combs was part of was, again, infiltrated in its earliest days, right? It became synthetic, helping in the elites. Listen to this word now, eugenics program. Eugenics program. This backfired on them, clearly in the form not only of Sean Combs, but certain other instances that have happened in the past that have not gotten too much press, that have been silenced, removed, deleted from the internet. So while this backfired, and there is now an opening, a much bigger opening, where normal people can see the darker reality of the music industry, the Hollywood industry, the fashion industry, because all of them follow the same formula, it doesn't necessarily mean that we can put a stop to it at this moment. We do need to keep talking about it, sharing things on the various social media platforms, getting other people to understand what's going on in order that we can somewhat do some damage control. This is our time in history where we can do some damage control and save the lives of current and future victims. This is our time to do that. Again, I'm going to reiterate what I said in one of my podcasts during the last week. No victim shaming. No telling someone who steps forward, where is your mother? Where was your father? Why didn't you run away? If someone is brave enough to step forward, as I see several people doing, support them. I don't mean financially. I mean support them with words of kindness, words of encouragement. That goes a very long way. I'm going to be adding additional information about the Buckingham Palace situation. And for those of you who have come to my platform here, who work for one or more of the people who are being exposed, trying to do your own denial, please know that I block people like you, okay? This is not my first rodeo. It's time the public knows what really goes on. And I have zero tolerance and zero patience for those of you who are paid shills for the royal family or for any of the Hollywood and or music heads. I have zero tolerance for you guys. You know, I'm going to keep working on this because human lives are at stake. And I, for one, refuse to stay quiet. Guys, I'm going to ask you to like this podcast. I'm going to ask you to please subscribe so you get an update. And hey, have a good weekend. Bye.